I'm gonna yap today. A lot. So this past Friday, I watched People We Meet on Vacation on Netflix when it debuted. When I sat down to watch it, I noted the differences between the book and the film, and I wanted to share some of that with you today, and to see how well the book holds up against the movie, and the movie holds up against the book. So let's talk about it. I'm going to be moving chronologically through the story, noting key differences and how that impacts the story overall. I do want to say I understand some differences will exist due to budgeting and runtime for the movie, and I want to take that into consideration as well. After all, this is a story told over the course of like 12 years and a bunch of international vacations, so it would only make sense for the movie to leave out some details or change some things. Before we get into it, I want to take a couple seconds and remind you to hit that like button and subscribe so I can keep making more videos like this. Back to the video. So in the book, we open about 5 summers ago where Poppy and Alex are on a vacation. Poppy is working on her travel blog while Alex is recovering from a recent breakup with his girlfriend Sarah, who he is in an on-again, off-again relationship throughout the past summers. Now, the movie opens up on a scene of Poppy reading on the beach that kind of matches her sitting here in this chair, something similar to that. And then it goes through a montage of short little clips that look like Poppy has traveled on a bunch of vacations by herself. This sticks out to me particularly because in the book, Poppy's not traveling by herself. Her long summer vacations are always taken with Alex, and then in the future when she works at R&R magazine, she takes them with Alex and like a magazine photographer. So she's not going on these trips alone necessarily, but also in the book, I don't believe it's specified whether or not she goes on other trips, possibly by herself in these summer ones or just the ones with Alex. Basically though, none of the trips are independent in the book, so I just was a little thrown off by seeing Poppy on all these trips by herself real quick, but either way, it does kind of make sense logically. If she works for a travel magazine, for her to be traveling alone frequently and not necessarily always with Alex, because it was specified in the book that Alex can only travel during the summer, so that's when they take their trip together. As for Poppy's travel blog, she started it about how to travel to certain places on a budget, and she would go there, do the experience, and then write about it so that other people could also travel on a budget. That is what her blog is about, and that is how she kind of got her job at the magazine R&R for traveling, and she now travels on their dime to places and writes about it and makes people want to go on these trips. But they're not really about being on budget anymore. It's sort of the fuel behind some of their trips for the past, yet it's not really mentioned except I think a one-off line in the movie. So her travel blog isn't a big thing in the movie. Present day in the film, Poppy has just returned from a trip and she gets a call from David. David is her best friend Alex's younger brother, and David is asking why Poppy hasn't returned his call about RSVPing to his wedding. Poppy says that she has just come across the mail after being out of the country, finds it, and she's like, oh, it's in Barcelona. I didn't like this change specifically because that's not how she ends up at David's wedding. But in the book, she doesn't speak to David about the wedding. The wedding's also not in Barcelona. In the book, she texts Alex first after they're falling out, and then he ends up inviting her to David's wedding because that's his younger brother. Now, when she initially texts him about going on a summer trip together, he says he can't because he's going to David's wedding in Palm Springs. And then Poppy says, oh, well, I'm going to Palm Springs too, which is a lie, but she is going to take off time so she can go to Palm Springs because she wants to fix her friendship with Alex. So Poppy ends up taking time off and paying for this Palm Springs trip out of pocket and lying to Alex about it, saying that she's traveling on the company's dime again. And the first half of their trip she's paying for while they stay somewhere, and the second half will be where they're being put up in the hotel for the wedding festivities. Or I think it was that they moved to a hotel. I think that was it. It's been a couple months since I read the book, so bear with me. So now we're going to flash back to 12 summers ago when Alex and Poppy initially met. Now, this story does flip-flop between past and present, so please bear with me as I flip-flop between past and present because I'm trying to go based on the runtime of the film and work off of that and then specify how the book did it. That is what we're going for here in case you haven't picked it up. So 12 summers ago, Alex and Poppy met at freshman orientation in college at a party and found out they were both from Linfield, Ohio, while one of them is from East and the other from the West. They don't end up speaking to each other again until the end of the semester, where I believe it was Poppy's roommate or a friend that set up for Poppy to carpool home with Alex because she didn't have a way to get home and he was driving his own car home. Now, in the movie, they have altered this to be 9 years ago, which doesn't really make a big difference time-wise, as well as Poppy and Alex not actually meeting until the day of carpooling home, as in they've literally never seen each other before. And aggravating as it was to change how they met as somebody who enjoyed the book a lot, it also doesn't change the story continuity-wise, and I understand why they might make that change with runtime. So there's the change, but it doesn't impact the overall story. I also just really quick want to point out that because in the movie Poppy is a brunette, she's blonde in the book, and that is an opinion thing that bothers me. That is my opinion. I really enjoy seeing an adaptation done to the point of having all of the characters match their character description from a book in the film. But that's just my personal preference. I think the actress did a phenomenal job representing Poppy. It was just a little bit like, oh, she doesn't look how I pictured her, but that's fine. In the book, they just carpool home together and Alex drops her off at the end of the day, and that's that basically. This is where they form a friendship and get to know each other, and where you're introduced to seeing Alex is very serious, rigid, and organized, whereas Poppy is very laid back and lazy to an extent. But that is where they get to know each other, and that's also the point in the movie where you get to meet their personalities. And I feel like that might be the only place in the whole movie where I felt like their book personas were truly and accurately represented. In the movie, I don't understand why at this point they've decided to have Poppy accidentally cause the keys to get locked in the car. Poppy and Alex end up staying in a motel overnight, and something about going to a wishing well together. The wishing well part can definitely represent their personalities, but I don't know why we included this specific difference. I didn't like it personally, and I don't understand what that change provides for the story whatsoever. Back in the present is when Poppy's friend Rachel encourages her to contact Alex and try and mend their friendship because it's something that's bothering Poppy. Now, in the book, she does this by going home and texting him by herself and then asking, like, hey, do you want to go on a trip this summer? And like I said before, this is when Alex says he can't, the Palm Springs thing, the wedding, and then Poppy just like, no, I can go to that. In the movie, she does it on a phone call, which was like secondhand embarrassment because it's like, oh, ooh, Anyways, she says to Alex on the phone in the movie that she's not going to Barcelona, but then she's like, oh, no, wait, I can go to Barcelona. I'll see you there. And stating that her magazine is actually sending her to Barcelona, which kind of parallels how she tells him that they were sending her to Palm Springs in the book. It's the same idea with different destinations. It is very important to note that in the book, Poppy pays for that trip together out of pocket, because that is fueling her for wanting this trip to go well, and why everything that goes wrong on the trip feels so impactful for her, because she's put a lot riding on this going well. And I feel like you kind of lose that fight that you feel in yourself reading it for Poppy, knowing that her magazine's paid for this trip and the only thing that's matters is just talking to Alex. Instead of going, oh, she's risked so much to be here. You don't have that risk. There's no anything that has you rooting for her, kind of. So in the movie, once they get past this, they meet in the airport in Barcelona, and Poppy asks if he wants to share a cab, but Alex has rented a car and drives her to her hotel, apartment, Airbnb. It's not specified exactly, so I'm going to refer to it as a hotel because that is what it appears as in the movie. In the book, they meet up at the airport and they catch a cab to a place where Poppy has rented a car from someone for the duration of their stay in Palm Springs. They also, importantly in the book, share a cab with a recently married couple who assume that Poppy and Alex are also recently married, and this comes up later. It's important to know that this married couple they talk to in the book several times is occurring in the present day. We then flash back in the film to their first summer together after driving home from college. This is where Poppy makes the plans to go on a trip to Vancouver Island, I believe it was, in Canada, because Alex had mentioned it, and that's their first place. We do keep this funny joke of Poppy's mom buying her a giant 500 pack of condoms and saying, "Oh, you're gonna need this." And Poppy's like, "Well, one, we're not those kind of friends, and two, I don't know why we would need that many." But it was really funny to read, and then Poppy goes and embarrasses Alex, and I can really appreciate that we kept that joke in the movie because that was genuinely so funny. I remember cracking up when I read that. On their Vancouver trip, they do meet the same boat guy. Oh, I can't remember his name now. I think it was Bill. I'm going to call him Bill. But they meet the boat guy that takes them to the other side of the island with young people and having a good time together, smoking, drinking, just classic college kid things, I guess. They also do have the inclusion in the movie from the book with coming across the statue of the silly little Bigfoot kind of guy and saying, "Oh, it speaks to me," and making that joke. Unfortunately, in the movie, that joke does not follow us around the rest of the time because in the book, they talk about how they would go on trips and always say, like, "Oh, it speaks to me," always referencing that event from their first trip. Now, they included that on the first trip, but they didn't drag that joke out for the rest of the movie, which had me a little disappointed because I thought it was really fun. There is a key difference on this trip. While everything is pretty much the same, I'm not really sure why we have Alex going skinny dipping and losing all his clothes. It's funny and entertaining, but I don't think it adds anything to the story, so I'm not sure why the writers decided to add this into the film because it doesn't exist in the book. But either way, I guess it was entertaining. Back to present day, the place where Poppy is staying in Barcelona does have the infamous thermostat issue from the book and the construction tarps on the balcony. But she and Alex aren't staying together, and this is only supposed to be Poppy's place, which then throws off a lot of the stuff that happens in their Airbnb that they booked in the book versus her hotel here in Barcelona. And then we flash back to New Orleans. This is, again, in the film, because I'm following the film's timeline, as I mentioned. They fake being married or newlyweds in the famous Café du Monde, where you get the beignets. And I'm assuming this is so they can get free beignets or something, but this is in the movie where they include that couple I mentioned that's the newlyweds that they speak with several times throughout the book during present day. They've included them in the past instead of present day. They end up showing off a fake first dance from their fake wedding that they didn't have, but just because they're being their vacation selves and showing off and hanging out with this married couple a little bit around New Orleans. I was a little bugged that they put this married couple in the past. Now, I don't think they serve too much purpose in the general story other than some entertainment in the book, but I don't know why we're changing the detail to the past instead of the present. It doesn't really change the story overall whether or not they were even included in the film, but again, it's the slight aggravation of the misrepresentation of the book because as a book lover, you always kind of want the film adaptation to match pretty closely. And I do want to say I am biased in this comparison, but I'm also just comparing it in general for fun. So somehow this is also where Poppy ends up doing her ankle twist, which in the book took place on a hike, and Alex had to carry her back down the hill, the mountain they were on. They do keep him making his comment about don't tell me to go faster or call me names kind of thing. But they just tossed this into the New Orleans trip in the movie instead of a separate trip. Again, because I'm literally assuming budgeting didn't allow them to go to so many different locations to film. Plus, I'm sure that's difficult to set up logistics wise. They really added a lot of stuff in the film just to this New Orleans trip that came from multiple different trips. Another of which is as Alex is carrying Poppy back to the hotel in New Orleans, they run into her current boyfriend, who Alex is not a fan of. I believe his name was Julian. And Poppy just goes inside with him, and that's about it. Flipping back to the present day once again, Alex is in Poppy's hotel in Barcelona trying to fix the AC, which of course is something they try to do in the book and mention the whole thing about just turn it down 1 degree at a time and let it rest. Which is something in the book the landlord tells Poppy, but in the film, it's odd that it's a set of directions that were left on a piece of paper in there, but I don't know. I'm not going to say anything. While Alex is fiddling with the AC, because in Europe, a lot of them happen to be ones that are kind of mounted up high on the wall near the ceiling, versus America, where we have like the central heating and air. So Alex is fiddling with the machine up on the wall and ends up tweaking his back. I appreciate that we had Alex tweak his back. I don't appreciate that this was like a new thing because it was so random, and it's like he literally didn't even do anything to hurt his back. Because in the book, he hurts his back by insisting he give the bed in their Airbnb to Poppy, and he sleeps on this funky little chair in the corner. And that causes his back to hurt, which then causes him to confide in Poppy that ever since they've grown apart in the past 2 years, he's been experiencing occasional like back pain that lasts a couple days at a time, and he knows how to deal with it. But this is just like, oh, a random thing randomly happened, but he was just standing there on a chair and he hurt his back. So I was bothered because it didn't make sense how he hurt his back, but it's fine, I guess. Poppy tells him to stay the night because she doesn't want him moving around in that condition, especially not driving, I suppose. So Alex ends up staying at her hotel in Barcelona overnight. We then flash back to 4 summers ago in the film where Poppy and Alex are supposed to go to Norway, but Poppy ends up getting sick, and Alex, instead of getting on the flight at Poppy's insistence, comes to her apartment in New York to help take care of her and help her get better. That is about the end of it in the film. There's not really much more of that. I feel like they should have included more of this in the film because I felt like this was a pivotal moment for their relationship, or I'm sorry, their friendship, but relationships can be platonic too. But in the book, they have Alex go visit Poppy, who is just like absolutely out of it, has wet her bed. He changes her sheets for her. He takes care of her, makes her soup. I believe she had pneumonia, but it's just like important to have all of that information. I also want to point out that in the movie, this is just about the point where I've realized that we are not learning much about their personalities or past at all, and it's kind of just throwing scenes out there. And I don't think people who are watching the movie that haven't read the book are truly getting who Poppy and Alex are and why their friendship is important. We haven't really mentioned their past outside of each other, like why they are the way they are. I could be wrong. I did write down a whole outline for this, but I'm pretty sure Alex has 3 brothers, and they all do like A, B, C, D, like Bridgerton siblings, and that's why David is the youngest because he's the 4th one. But we haven't mentioned Alex's family other than David. We haven't mentioned Poppy's family other than her mom and her dad. Poppy has 2 brothers in the book, and they're just not mentioned at all. It was just kind of aggravating that I don't think people are really getting who the characters are in the movie. Present day, Poppy and Alex then attend a wedding event, which I'm assuming is some sort of rehearsal dinner for David's wedding, but it's just not specified. This is where David makes an offhand comment that causes Alex to realize Poppy lied about being in Barcelona for her magazine and is actually just there because she had told David she couldn't go because she needed to go to Croatia or something, or Greece, I don't remember. Alex walks her back to her hotel and confronts her about this, where she reveals that she really just wanted to make up with him and go back to how things were before Tuscany. This is in reference to the film. This then leads us back in time to what happened in Tuscany. So in Tuscany they've kind of combined two trips into one again in the film, which I will specify when it comes to those details. But in Tuscany, Poppy is there with her boyfriend Trey, who is also a photographer for the magazine, and Alex is there with his on-again, off-again girlfriend Sarah, and they are all four sharing a villa together. Poppy gets scared that she might be pregnant because her period is late and she gets sick. Now, in the book, I believe it's only because her period is a little bit late, and I think it was because of stress. So in the book, she goes out to get a test and she comes back and she's just really worried, and Alex comes across her and is like, hey, why are you upset? She confides in him, and he basically like holds her hand while they wait for the results, and they come back negative. But that was a scary moment for Alex in the book because his mom has died and he's just thinking about all of the past and raising his brothers basically kind of on his own with his dad. Now, they changed that a little in the movie to something I really didn't like, where, like I said, she was sick and her period was late. But in the movie, she does this and she starts texting Alex while he's with Sarah. And Alex is like, I guess I should go check on her, and just leaves Sarah in there. But Sarah did say, like, oh yeah, go check on her. But also, like, my dude, in any real situation, you are with your girlfriend. I get that Poppy's your best friend, but I think he should have asked Sarah if, one, she would be all right if he went to go check on Poppy. Like, would this bother you? Because he already knows that they have broken up several times because of his friendship with Poppy. But also, he should have texted Poppy and said, hey, can this wait till morning, or is this an emergency, or can I bring Sarah out with me? It's just logically, in two separate relationships, that kind of like rushing to him shouldn't have happened. So then he, in the movie, goes out to Poppy. They go to town, they get a test. He holds her hand, they take it, comes back negative, and then they almost kiss. Now, this is where there's a huge difference, because in Tuscany, that's about where it ends. It's just negative, and she thanks him for being there as a really good friend. This part is the reason their friendship kind of dwindled. And this actually happened on a separate trip to Croatia in the book. So I'll talk about the movie part first, and then I'll talk about the book part in a second. So in the movie, after the test comes back negative, Poppy kind of goes in to kiss Alex, and he looks like he's going to be into it too, until she pulls back and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it meant nothing. And then Alex is just like, what am I to you? Like, is this just a game? Like, you just tricked me kind of thing. They end up going back to the villa. Next morning, Alex has proposed to Sarah, and then Poppy and Alex have just kind of a little disagreement about life, and Alex is like, yeah, well, I'm gonna be a teacher, and I'm just gonna teach at the old Linfield High School, and Sarah's gonna take over her dad's real estate business. Also, I just wanted to note, in the book, Sarah's actually also a teacher at the Linfield High School with Alex, and not in real estate or whatever. Don't really know why we changed her history, because there wasn't necessarily a reason to. Anyway, that is what they're saying dwindles their friendship in the film. In the book, it happens on a separate trip to Croatia with this magazine photographer that literally just won't give the two any time alone together. So they all get like super drunk one night. Alex sneaks out of his hotel room to go see Poppy because he's sharing it with this snoring photographer. He and Poppy end up making out on the floor, and then he stops. And he says it's because we shouldn't be doing this because they're drunk. What he means is we shouldn't be doing this drunk, but Poppy takes it as he doesn't want to kiss me, he just wants to be friends. And then they just kind of don't talk about it, and then they just never talk again kind of thing, because they're both embarrassed and don't bring up what happened, and that's why they grow apart. And it's not because they almost kissed and then Alex got engaged and then blah, 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 blah. I'm also pretty sure in the book that Alex never gets engaged to Sarah. I could be wrong. Again, I read this a couple months ago, but it's just weird to change some details like that because I feel like adding some of them doesn't impact the story. But basically, their friendship dwindles in the book because they're both waiting for the other person to text back, while in the movie, they're actually in an argument, I guess. In the film, present day, we return back to Alex and Poppy at the hotel, where Alex has kind of dropped Poppy off for the night, but then goes back up there to talk to her. And he rushes in saying, I don't want to go back to how things were before Tuscany. And Poppy says, I can't have this conversation right now. It's too hot in here because thermostat doesn't work and they can't open windows because of the construction tarp, blah, blah, blah. But he's aggravated because she keeps saying she can't talk about it. She ends up cutting open the construction tarp so she can have some air for this very tough, real conversation that is about to happen. Poppy tells him, you got engaged and then you ghosted me. And then I find out that you're not even engaged anymore, and I want to know that none of this was my fault. And then Alex basically professes his love for her in the rain, and then they go inside and make love on the bed. In the book, quite similar, but they're kind of talking about the past and what was happening, and Poppy's confiding in him why it was really important for her for this trip to go so well. They need air because it's so hot in there, so they cut the tarp open and they're just like on the balcony of the Airbnb, and then they kiss, profess love, and they actually do the deed out there on top of the tarp in the rain, which I think I liked that because it was kind of a very real romantic moment versus the movie where it's like, no, we're not going to show them doing it for real. We're going to do the movie version where it's like on the bed, which I know it doesn't make much of a difference, but I felt like if they had kept it out on the balcony, it would have stayed really true to the book and the passion of the moment. Back to the film, they then go to David's wedding where everything is nice, and then the two of them are dancing, and Alex and Poppy start talking about real life, and they get into an argument about Alex saying like, well, this is real life, and Poppy saying, no, I mean, like, gotta get back to New York and think about things and how you and I are gonna be together and stuff. And Alex was like, this is real life. Like, we don't need to get back to real life and then consider this. This is real right here, right now. And then Alex basically tells Poppy, like, you never know what you want, and I knew this was a mistake, basically. Now, in the book, it's actually a great time at the wedding, and it's on their way home in the airport. She has walked Alex to his gate because his plane is taking off first, and then mentioned something about like having needed a vacation, and she's glad that she got to be on vacation with Alex, and Alex takes this as, I'm not a vacation from your real life, Poppy. And Poppy's like, no, I didn't mean it like that. And it was just a rough misunderstanding between the two where they didn't get to finish communicating that because Alex had to board his plane right then. It wasn't a technically like miscommunication trope because they were trying to communicate, but there was a third factor that stopped them from being able to. So, yada yada. Now, in the movie, after they've already parted ways because of their argument at the wedding, Poppy runs into Sarah, Alex's ex, at the airport. She is a flight attendant now, having changed jobs apparently, and then saying that, you know, she didn't know what she wanted out of life, but she's happy now, kind of thing. And it's just fuel for Poppy to go find Alex and talk about, like, I don't know what I want out of life. In the book, she does run into Sarah, but I will talk about that in a moment. So in the movie, Poppy flies home, but then ends up back in Linfield, Ohio, and she's going to Alex's house to apologize and basically try and make up with him. In the book, she also does this. She flies home, but instead of what happens in the movie, which is she ends up chasing Alex down as he's going for a run, and then they kind of profess love and apologize in the middle of the street. She, in the book, goes to the school where Alex works and is trying to catch him after school, but that's where she runs into Sarah, who kind of encourages her to go find what she wants out of life. And then Poppy runs to this kind of bar place where the teachers meet after school occasionally to go talk to Alex there. And instead of looking for him to take her back, she's just looking to be honest with him and hope that they can reconcile what went down between them. And then they end up together in the end for the book there. So there was a little change there at the end, but it both has Poppy returning to Linfield to speak with Alex. In the epilogue, they have a dog, which I don't remember if they have this in the book or not, but I know that Alex had a cat, which wasn't mentioned in the movie at all. But basically, Alex gets like this really nice job, which kind of matches the movie. He gets a job teaching in New York, and they're basically just happy together. Poppy resigns from her job, matches both mediums there. And then the very last scene is the two of them lounging on beach chairs, just relaxing, copying our OG book cover here, which I thought was cute, is a nice homage to where the story came from. Overall, the movie certainly doesn't follow the book exactly, but I think it makes a lot of sense due to, again, runtime and budget and needing to fit certain details in separate places, because it just wouldn't make sense to throw in such short information in certain areas, as well as not being able to travel to all these separate locations so many times for filming. I think it's a good movie aside from the book, not comparing them together. I do think you don't get enough information about the characters and what makes them who they are in the movie, but to each their own. I think it's a great movie overall. It just doesn't match the book perfectly. I really wouldn't call it necessarily true to the book, even though we did include a lot of details. There was just a lot that I felt was missing with the passion between characters and what's truly fueling them to be who they are and act the way they do between each other. I do want to point out the part where Alex and Poppy get into an argument at the wedding in the movie doesn't feel as impactful as it should from the book, because in the movie Alex basically tells her, like, you don't know what you want out of life, and gosh, I can't believe I fell for this and thought this would work, and then walks away from her. Whereas in the book, the quote is so powerful, and I feel like they should have brought this into the movie. It's so good. It's, I'm not a vacation from your real life. I'm not a novelty experience. I'm someone who's been in love with you for a decade, and you should never have kissed me if you didn't know that you wanted this. All the way. It wasn't fair. Because that's showing the vulnerability in Alex that really makes the reader hurt in a good way, which I feel like you just don't get watching the film, because they don't include those moments. You don't have all of the details and all of the juicy things that led up to it and the passion behind it. Instead, it felt, because a movie, like a scripted fight instead of real reality feelings. That concludes my comparison between the book and the film. I hope you enjoyed watching this video essay yap session I've just done. Thank you so much for watching it. I had a lot of fun doing this. Once again, please do like and subscribe. It really does help me keep making more videos like this. If you want to see more of me or more of my thoughts, here is my Instagram over here, where I am a lot more active. And then if you just want to know what I'm reading, you can check out my Goodreads over here, both of which will be linked down below in the description box. If you have any recommendations or want to see something specific, you can also drop that below in the comments, and I will do my best to add it to my notes. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys back here real soon. Bye!